I had this discussion with a friend of mine the other day. Suppose they give out, $2,000, which is what Biden's proposing. I think $1,400 plus the initial $600. So suppose it's a one-time payment of $2,000. Well, there's people on both sides of the debate. One, people need that money now because the economy still hasn't recovered. On the other hand, like you said, it's not incentivizing people to work. What if they have universal basic income, Peter? Do you agree with that notion? Let's say they give out $2,000 every month, not just a one-time payment, every month. Would that do anything?
Well, it would push up prices. I mean, you have to remember there's a big difference between people earning money because they're productive and they're contributing goods and services to society, and people who are just spending money that the government prints. Just because people need money doesn't mean the government can provide it with them. If you need money, you have to provide goods and services in order to earn that money. But when you just print money instead of letting people earn it, all that happens is that the prices go up. And that's what's going to happen. And if the U.S. sends everybody $2,000, they're just going to go and buy stuff. But where's the stuff coming from? They're not helping to produce it. It's just going to run up the trade deficit, which is already at a record high. That's another thing I got right about Trump. He promised to shrink the deficit and win the trade war. I said that we would lose the trade war, and we did. Our merchandise trade deficit is the highest it's ever been. Our trade deficit with China in particular is at an all-time record high. And so if we just take these stimulus checks and buy more goods manufactured in China and other places, it just increases the trade deficit, puts more downward pressure on the value of the dollar and upward pressure on the prices of all the goods that we're buying.
This is a good point you're brought up.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the ManMadeSurvival Show.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Prado of ManMadeSurvival. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel and watching this video. I really do appreciate it because this video is going to be kind of like the continuation of the previous podcast. And if you remember in the previous podcast, what I talked about was the prices of food going up. Okay, and this was before we really kind of embraced what the Biden administration is gonna look like for the next 4 years. So that's why it's important for us to put all these pieces together so we can look at the bigger picture of how things are going to turn out here in the next few years. And right off the bat, with Biden administration starting off, there's a lot of big changes that happen. I think he signed over 50 executive orders, and a lot to do with the economy and other things that is going to affect us long term. So that's why it's very important that we take the prepper movement serious now, or hopefully you've started to change your way of looking at things, because even though the prepper community is waiting for the one event that is really going to make the country go into extreme violence, I doubt that it's going to get to that level all at one time. So that's why it's important for us to take the prepper community and transition it or transform it to a way of life, instead of being something that we do for fun, we do for, as a hobby. It's going to have to be a way of life because of all the policies that are going to be implemented and everything's going to be happening. Yes, the violence is going to get here, but it's not going to be as we think it's going to happen, for the simple fact of how things have been turning out in the past several months. Okay, 2020 was a big indicator. In the beginning of this year, leading up to Joe Biden being inaugurated, we saw a lot of things happen, and things did not turn out exactly like we thought it was going to happen. Okay, a lot of people were locked and loaded, ready to go, but nothing happened. So now that we're seeing all these policies being put into place, we really have to transition from waiting for that big event to happen to making it a way of life, which is something that I'm going to be touching base here with you in this podcast, on the next one, and the one after that, because it's all going to dictate how we're going to have to prepare. So that's why it's important for you to listen to this podcast, for share this information with your friends and family, for you to start implementing certain things with your family, with your spouse, with brothers and sisters, and the family unit has to become stronger. So please stay all the way to the end. Share this information with your friends and family. Post this all over your social media. And please help us grow. Please subscribe to the channel, whichever it is that you're listening this through, whether it's, Vimeo, whether it's Gap TV, whether it's Brighton.com, YouTube, the speaker platform, whichever social media that you're listening this through, please subscribe to that. Leave us a comment, like the video, podcast, whatever it is, so you can help us grow. Because as it has turned out, this podcast has become very important. It has grown a lot in the past year and a lot in the several days. We have seen big changes, and it's all thanks to you. So again, I want to thank you for that, for doing those things where we're reaching more people. And the good thing is that this podcast is growing exponentially, and it could grow even more if each and every one of you who are listening to this, which it can get close to 5,000 to 10,000, would share it all at once. So please help us get our message out there. Help us, get people prepared, because the way that the prepper community is taking things is not going to be just like they thought it was going to be. All right, so before I continue, also I want to remind you about the book that I'm giving away. It's Preppers Secrete Cache. You can go to www.preppersecretcache.com, or you can go to ManMadeSurvivalStore.com. On the front page, there will be the link for you to click and order the book. The book is absolutely free. All we need your help is with shipping. And the book retails for $24.99, and the shipping is only $9.99. So you are getting it for free. So I would really appreciate it if you can get that, read it, and pass it along to your friends and family so they can also get prepared. All right, so let's get into this podcast, because again, it's very important. And we're going to continue this talk about the economy, because everything that we have been seeing up until this day, it has been something that a lot of people were not really preparing for, because Trump was in office. For a lot of people, the realization that the Biden administration is going to stay, that there's no grand plan, that there's no secret anything, that the Biden administration is continuing, is still there, and is enacting policies. The policies are going to affect us in the next 4 years and probably beyond. Once that realization has come about, people are starting to have that holy crap moment. And that is the reason why I believe this podcast is important, especially this one in particular, because we're going to get into the hyperinflation kind of things. We're going to look at the debt, but not from now, but 4 years from now. And 4 years from now, it's not a long ways away. So we really have to pay attention to those things, the things that are going to affect us long term, without having to have some type of event that is going to plummet the United States into some widespread chaos. Because this could be very small, drip by drip, until we find ourselves in a hyperinflation scenario where people will become violent, but it wouldn't be as if it was a total collapse that happened overnight. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get across here. So the first thing that I want to show you is the debt clock once again. I did it in the previous podcast because it all tied together with how the price of food is going up. Everything's soaring. And special things are going to go up with all the implementations that are going to be happening here in the next few weeks. But as you look on the screen, all right, I'm showing you a picture of the U.S. debt clock. And it's showing the United States debt as $27.831 trillion. Okay? And the reason that I wanted to show you that is because this does not include the last 2.4 COVID relief package. So in reality, the debt is greater than $30 trillion. So we have to think about the consequences. All right. But when I was looking into the debt clock once again, so I could take the picture and show it to you, I noticed something that I did not notice in the previous time that I did this, or at least, I don't know if they added it on or I just simply overlooked it. But on the right of the screen, you're seeing what it says. All right. It says debt clock time machine, and you can actually click back or forth. We're going to click on the one that says forward, and you see in the little menu right there that has 1980, 1990, 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012, 2016, 2021, and then 2025. So I really want to go forward because, there's no real point on going back. We really need to be looking forward to how we're going to look like in the next 4 years. So when I clicked on it, it really made my jaw drop. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that picture. Okay, and as you're seeing on the screen right there, what it's showing you is that the United States in 4 years' time, all right, and it says right there, on this day in 2025, at current rates, the United States debt will be $49.432 trillion. That's how much we're going to be in debt. And that should really frighten you, because even though we don't know how much longer can we accumulate debt to where we don't have hyperinflation, it's just showing you how much more debt we're going to be in the next 4 years. You know, and 4 years is not a long ways away. All right. So it's going to explode even more if we continue the same rate. So there's a few things that I want you to consider and some things that I want you to look at. All right. For one, I already showed you the debt. And the second one is the unfunded liabilities. Let's first show 2021. All right. The unfunded liabilities, it sits at a total, or the U.S. total debt at $82 trillion or $82.72 trillion. All right. That is enormous. But once we fast forward to 2025, look at it. It's $94.694 trillion. Again, it's an explosion of the debt. So, as I mentioned a minute ago, we have to really look at the long term. As I mentioned a minute ago, we have to look at the long-term effects of that this is going to have in our day-to-day lives. Okay, there's people talking about this right now. Okay, and it's something that I've shared with you for a long time already, that we're going to experience hyperinflation. We're going to look like Venezuela. You know, there were critics in the comment section saying that was never going to happen, that we're never going to see that day, but it's creeping on us slowly each and every day. That's why it's important for us to change the way that we think about prepping. Instead of waiting for that one event that we have to prepare for it to last 6 months or even a year, we have to look at it instead of the event being the one day, it's going to be over a period of several years. So that means that your lifestyle is going to have to change. And if it doesn't change right now, it's not going to change later, or it's going to have to be changed later, but it's going to be a greater stress on your mental health. All right. If you already struggle with mental health issues, because you cannot process stress very well, imagine how it's going to look like later on when all of these policies and all this debt finally comes into the consumer price index. So it comes into how much you're paying at the grocery store. Because if right now people cannot afford food, and food is one of the big issues that the mainstream media talks about, the alternative media talks about, and pretty much everybody talks about is food prices. Why? Because you have to have food, right? But when people are starting to struggle a lot with the prices as they are right now, how much more are they going to struggle later on where the prices are even higher? All right, so the next thing that I want you to look at, that I'm going to show you the picture of, is going to be the GDP, okay? Let me find it here on the screen. All right, so here's the U.S. federal debt to GDP ratio. And this one is for right now, for 2021. And it shows you 4 different things. It shows you 1960 was 53.32%, 1980 34.50%, 2000 59.44%, and now 130.69%. Before I show you the next one, what that means is that how much we're spending, how much our debt is compared to how much we're producing. So our debt is 130% greater than what we're bringing in. All right, so we're spending all of our money plus 30.69% more. That's what that means. Now let me show you the picture for 2025. We are 200.49%. All right, so that is a great increase, and that means that we're already spending 2 years in advance. So for 2025, we're really already spending money for 2026, maybe even 2027. All right, that's what that means. And that is the repercussions that we have to look at. So people are going to have to flee the United States, or some are going to attempt to do it, okay? I was having a conversation with a coworker not too long ago, and we were talking about the whole Biden administration and all this stimulus and everything that's going to be happening in the economy. And I told him, are you going to flee the United States? And he looked at me and said, heck, man, I cannot even afford to live here. How am I going to go anywhere else? And, and that was kind of like the epiphany type of time for him to realize that that's exactly why people flee their countries. Anywhere south of the border, Venezuela, Mexico, Honduras, any other places like that where they have extreme poverty. That is the reason they come to the United States, to have a better life, And even though people really want immigrants to come here legally, how can they do that when they don't even have enough money to eat in their home country? All right, they're not going to be able to file the applications, pay the fees, do all those things. So the only thing that they have is to come here illegally. All right, so I'm not going to get too big into that issue because obviously I have a bias towards that. So I want to stay neutral as much as I can. I'm bringing you the facts. I'm not citing either or. The point is that it's going to be in reverse. People are going to attempt, or they're going to have the desire to flee the United States. Okay, once all of this really hits the fan and they see prices go up, people being evicted from their homes go up, when the social unrest goes up, they're going to look at the things that's going on and they're going to have to flee to another country. They're going to try to go to Canada. They're going to try to go to Mexico, or they might even try to get on an airplane and go somewhere else on the other side of the world, maybe Europe, maybe Asia, maybe some place in Africa. The point is that people are going to have the desire of living this country. Okay, so if you're one of the people who are not, or who's going to refuse to go, won't be able to go, or whatever the case may be, then you have to make sure that you take the steps right now for you to have a type of life that's going to be self-reliant, or as much as possible. So you have to buy everything you need right now. You're going to have to implement everything you need right now. You're going to have to look at everything that's going to be taking baby steps to get to the greater goal of not needing a grocery store or not needing any type of assistance of any way, okay? Because that is going to run out eventually. That is the purpose of this podcast, so we can talk about the real issues, so I can give you the real, the facts, and not sugarcoat it. I'm not gonna hide the truth, as harsh as it may sound or it may seem. Reality is there. Reality doesn't care about us not wanting to be that way. Reality will still be the same, whether we want to admit it or not. Okay, so the first headline that I have for you is this. What does 200 trillion of debt really mean for the global economy? That's from positivemoney.org. And now that I looked at it, I want to mention, all right, what is debt? And this article is really going to show us what debt really is, okay? And this is going to fortify my position into, instead of the prepper community waiting for that one event that they're going to have to survive for a few months, we have to change the outlook and make it into a lifestyle, all right, not just a hobby. Debt are always, above all else, a claim on future production to be paid out in future earnings, either directly or through taxation. And if for some reason governments manage to keep on kicking the debts ever further down the road, as they tend to do, it will be our children and grandchildren to pay the price through lower earnings and generally poor world, because debts always have to be paid one way or another. If this wasn't the case, then we must have found a way to create something out of nothing, a miracle. All right, so the reason I wanted to show you that is because our kids and our grandkids, and by 2025, our great-great-grandkids are probably going to have to pay for the debt. Now, this is not just happening in the United States, it's happening all over the world. But right now, I want to focus on what's happening in the United States, not in the national level, but really on the citizen to citizen level, because that is where really we're going to see the hurt, especially because of all the policies that they want to enact, also with the stimulus package that they want to pass. So we have to focus on all those things. Like, Joe Biden unveiled a 1.9 trillion COVID stimulus package. And a lot of people say that was the best thing ever, that we needed. Even the markets rallied, people were hopeful. But when you really look at it long term, it's even going to hurt us even more. Now, the U.S. debt clock, as I mentioned a minute ago, it does not include the $2.4 trillion that the omnibus bill passed, or it was worth, plus the COVID relief package, because, one was, I think it was 1.4 trillion, the omnibus bill, and the COVID relief package was 900 billion. So when you put it together, they still have not added to the debt clock, okay? That same 27 trillion was before they passed it, so therefore they have not added to it. So in reality, you can add that forecast to the 2025, that was the 49.432 trillion, it could actually be over 50 trillion by then. And that's if they don't add anything else. They don't add another stimulus. And, there's going to be talk, as you heard Peter Schiff talk about it in the beginning of this video, about a universal basic income. So if they're going to be doing that, they have to make sure that it's going to have to be something that they can afford. Because right now there's a lot of states that do not have the money to be able to do it. So I'm going to touch bases in that, or I'm going to show you what they're planning on doing. And then, while I was doing the research and I was thinking about this and I was sitting here contemplating all this information, I thought about it, and I could think of two ways that it could actually work, but not for everyone in the country, but for certain people. All right. So first, I want to talk about what the Joe Biden plan is and what's in it. All right. So the headline goes: Joe Biden unveils 1.9 trillion COVID stimulus package or stimulus plan. That's from Zero Hedge. Biden unveils his two-step plan of rescue and recovery in a 30-minute presentation, which was just as leaked in advance. A 1.9 trillion stimulus proposal, which will encounter immediate Republican opposition due to its big-ticket spending on Democratic priorities, including aid to states and local governments, a hike in the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and expanded unemployment benefits, so even more trillions. This is a problem because, as we explained previously, certain key measures such as aid to states and money for healthcare would likely need 60 votes in the Senate. On the other hand, jobless benefits, stimulus payments, and the minimum wage hike could go through with a simple majority under a special budget tool. Amusingly, progressives are already saying Biden's bill isn't big enough. All right, just a quick comment on that. There is certain leaders who are already saying that the bill is not big enough. They want even more spending. And, we can point fingers, but the point is that if for them $1.9 trillion is not enough, what would be the real number that they, if they had a field day, they could have whatever amounts of money they wanted to have to cover whatever it is that they wanted to spend it on. How much would that be? And more than likely would probably be, $5 trillion, probably more. I mean, when the money printing is endless, the possibilities are endless as well. All right, so let's get back into the article. A brief recap on Biden's proposal is below. 1. Direct payments of $1,400 on top of the $600 approved in December. $400 per week in supplementary unemployment benefits through September. 3. $350 billion for state and local governments. 4. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. 5. $130 billion to help schools reopen. 6. $160 billion in funding for national programs of vaccination, testing, and other coronavirus containment efforts. 7. $30 billion for rental and small landlord support. 8. $25 billion for child care providers. 9. Expanded food assistance. 10. Expanded child tax credits. And number 11, expanded medical and family leave. All right, so that is pretty much the recap of everything that he wants to have in that bill. And there's 4 of them that I want to go over, because I really do believe it's important, not just for our economy, but for our everyday life. Okay, so the first one is raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. The reason that one is important is because of the repercussions it's going to have. So we really have to think about this one, okay? Yes, for the individual worker, the employee, $15 is going to be great, because, depending on where you sit, whether it's $7.25, which is the minimum wage now, to $14.99, you're going to have to get a raise, okay? For the employee, that's the greatest news ever. Everybody loves a raise. Who doesn't love a raise? But that is going to be a big problem for the employers, which is really the way that we have to look at this, that a lot of people are not thinking about, because the reason that Biden wants to do this is because they want to help the worker, right? They're not really so much worried about the employee. Now, there's businesses, big businesses, they have billions of dollars in profits. That means, they already paid all their employees, their bills and everything, and what's left over is billions of dollars. Those companies can and would be able to, have the money given to the employee, have that raise, depending on what it is. But the smaller businesses are the ones that we're not going to be able to do that. Now, we have to think. Right now, we're in the middle of the pandemic, which, it has a bigger survival rate. But the point is that we are going through the lockdowns. California, New York, Washington State, other places around the country, they're locking down. And because of that, what happened is that hundreds of thousands of businesses, small businesses, have shut down for good. So when those small businesses who are still open are struggling to be able to, just stay open, how big of an impact is it going to have on them to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? And it's not just the restaurants. The restaurants, I think Joe Biden said that he wants to get rid of that $2 an hour thing. But the point is that it's not just them. It's warehouses, it's, Walmarts, it's all these different other sectors all across the economy that is going to be affected, right? So there's several things that's going to happen because of that. One, hours are going to get cut, and two, people are going to get laid off. So with the people who going to get laid off, they have two options. One, go find another job, which, now the entry level is $15 an hour, or they're going to have to go into the unemployment, safety net. And it depends on where in the country we're talking about. If this is the major cities, more than likely they're going to go to the safety net of the government, which once you pile so many people on top of it, eventually that safety net is going to snap, and all those people are going to fall into the abyss. The other people are going to go to a different job, and they're going to, they're going to be competing with people who are also looking for a job, but now they're going to have to compete for lower hours. Something that we saw in Walmart when they were boasting about giving people $15 an hour is that weeks later, employees were complaining that hours were cut back. In some cases, it got cut. Got cut back to the point where they were making the same amount of money as they were making with a lower wage, or they were making even less because of how many hours were cut, and even more employees were employed. Okay, so that is the reason why $15 an hour is not a good thing. For the employee, yes. For the employer, no. For the economy, all put together, a definite no. But that is not something that people want to listen to. They're worried about me rather than them. So they say $15 an hour for me. Whether you're working at McDonald's, Walmart, a warehouse, whatever it is, it's a great thing. Walmart is going to be cutting people left and right. And we saw that from McDonald's, now that I think about it. When this issue about $15 an hour came along a few years back, what McDonald's did is that they fired people, and instead of having people taking in orders, they had the machines. They had the little kiosk things to take in orders. So they will go around and they're gonna try to find ways to not spend that money. And this whole fourth industrial revolution with the robots and everything is really gonna make them come even faster. That's gonna be the springboard that the robots are gonna take in order for them to take the jobs that the corporations are not willing to pay for the employees to have, if that makes any sense. But anyways, the next one is $400 per week in supplementary unemployment benefits through September. All right, so now let's go back to what I said about the minimum wage. If somebody's already getting paid, okay, let's say $600 a week, $700 a week, $800 a week, and they get fired, that means that if they go in the unemployment, they're gonna have to get a pay cut, okay? Because even though it's $400 per week, that means that whatever the state gives you depends on where you live, because every state gives the different unemployment benefit. Whatever they give is $400 on top of that. So let's just go with a flat rate of $200 all across the board. Plus the $400 is $600 a week. For the people who are used to getting $700, $800, $900, $1,000 a week, and they get fired because the prices went up, or not the prices, but the minimum wage went up, and they started letting people go, and one of those people happened to be laid off. That means that if they were living paycheck to paycheck, it's gonna be even worse now, because now they're gonna be getting a lower payment on the unemployment. Now they're expecting people to be unemployed all the way through September. That's 9-10 months from now. So how much worse is the economy going to get? How much is the job sector going to get once this $15 an hour gets implemented, right? We have to look at those little details, because a lot of people are not really paying attention to the little details, and that's really what's gonna be the big pain in the butt later on for everyone, for all the employees. All right, so the next one that I want to talk about is the $30 billion in rental and small landlord support. The reason that I want to touch base on that very quickly is because we have to think about how many people would have become homeless overnight if it wasn't because the government intervened and they said that landlords could not evict people. So that had a chain reaction, because when people were not paying their rent, that means that the landlords have to put up, the money that was not being given. Some landlords could not afford it, or most of them. Therefore, the banks were not getting money. And since the banks couldn't foreclosure on the landlords because they couldn't evict the people, that would have been a very big problem down the road if the government did not intervene. Now, they have not passed this bill, but they want to do it, right? $30 billion for that. That's going to help right now. But if it wasn't for that, how much big of a problem would the country be in right now? Which takes me to the next point: expanded food assistance. Expanded food assistance just means that they're giving that extra money that they were giving a few months ago. Okay, because once the deadline ended, the states brought back the amount of food stamps they were giving people out, because they expanded it, they maxed it out and then gave a little bit more. Now they're bringing it back to the regular levels, and people are saying that that's not enough. All right, so that's why the government's stepping in. They're expanding the food stamp assistance, and that includes a bunch of other things, like WIC and food stamps and other programs that has to do with food, including the schools and stuff like that. So that to me is the bigger red flag of all, because if people are struggling, especially with small children that are out of school right now, how much is it going to be later on when no one's going to school because we had an economic collapse, because we're having all these problems around the country? That lack of food because of the school is going to be noticed even more later on. All right, that's why it's important for you to take steps right now to make sure that you and your family can sustain and be self-reliant later on. Once all of this gets implemented, the dollar gets destroyed, hyperinflation hits, and it happens like Venezuela, where even though the government is helping, they're helping every 3 weeks and they're only giving a handful of days worth of food out. Okay, so you have to be able to feed you and your family. So now governments are taking steps. The whole talk about universal basic income has come into the minds of every American. In the years past, people would have said that it was the worst idea ever. But now they're kind of changing their thinking, because now they need the money. Before COVID-19 happened, before the lockdowns happened, before they were giving money away happened, Republicans have always said, not only from the citizenship, but from Congress and everybody, they have always said that is the worst thing ever, that's socialism, we don't want that, we don't need it, don't even think about it. And then COVID-19 hit, people are out of work, the economies are shut down, people are finding themselves not be able to pay their bills, and now they're looking at government to give them money. All right, when they first rolled out the first stimulus check, a lot of people were very happy about it, even though in previous years or even months before then, they were opposed to getting free money. Okay, and now that we're so deep into the pandemic, where we have lockdowns for a long time, where the economy has been destroyed for a while now everybody's changing their tune about getting the universal basic income. So now people are really rooting for it, but now the mayors of cities are starting to create a coalition where they are going to push for universal basic income, which is my next headline. Meet the mayors pushing for guaranteed income in 30 cities across the country. This from CNBC.com. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1967 book, quote, "Where do we go from here? Chaos or community?" End quote. The civil rights leader discussed how to best address poverty in the United States. Quote, "I am now convinced that the simplest approach will prove to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a now widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income, end quote, he wrote. Mayors from Guaranteed Income, sometimes called MGI, was founded by Michael D. Tubbs, then mayor of Stockton, California, in June 2020, after his city launched and later extended a basic income program where 125 residents receive $500 monthly thanks to funding from the Economic Security Project and a nonprofit that supports other guaranteed income experiments. All right, before I get further into the article, I want to mention this. All right, in Martin Luther King Jr.'s book in 1967, there was a big difference in the debt. All right, I'm gonna take you back to it because as I showed you in the picture, okay, from the national debt, the GDP ratio was only the debt to GDP ratio was only 53.32%. That means that we still had a lot of money in our pockets than we were putting out. Okay, that means we had savings. We had a lot of savings in the United States. So when Martin Luther King wrote this, there was money in the government for us to be able to do that. But now we're in 2021. We're at over $30 trillion in debt. We're projected to be in $50 trillion in debt in 4 years. So for us to do that, it's not going to be possible, okay, unless certain things are met. And eventually that's going to fall through either way. Now, the article is focusing on two different areas of the entire country, right? These are going to be the models for them to see if it's going to work or not. But pay attention to the details of how they want to do it. So I'm going to do the math for you as it comes out, because we really have to pay attention on how much money is going to be spent, on how much money has to be raised and all of that, all right? So the article goes on to say, Richmond, Virginia, quote, when you look at 2020 and the iniquities that have been illuminated this year, you've also seen the injustices that a lot of black and brown people have encountered for generations. It's systematic, end quote, says LeVar Stoney, mayor of Richmond, Virginia, where the city is piloting a program in which citizens will receive $500 per month for 24 months. Quote, some people may think that this is a radical idea, but I think that there's nothing radical about helping people, end quote. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the math because we have to see how much they're going to spend, how much the city of Richmond, Virginia is going to have to raise, or is going to have to find the funding somehow to be able to give it to people. Now, Richmond population is 231,651. Just, a simple Google search showed that 10% live under the poverty line. That's equals, 10% of 231,651. It's 23,161.1, rounded up to 23,165. Then divide that into 4 families. That would be 5,794.25. Round that to 5,791 times 500. That's 2,895,500. And that's just 1 month given out per family, okay? So let's remember that. Now, times that 24, that equals 69,492,000. So the city of the city of Richmond, Virginia, they're going to have to find somewhere to bring 69,492,000 into this program to be able to give it, to 5,791 families. $500 per month for 2 years. So in 2 years, they're going to spend this 69 million. And that means different things. They're going to have to either raise taxes on the rest of the population in Virginia. They're going to have to get debt from the government, try to get some type of funding from the government, federal government. They're going to have to get rid of some program or do something to be able to fund it. So either way, money is not free. It's this program, even though it's giving people free money, that's going to help them in the long run, but really devastate the entire state sooner rather than later. It's going to have to be those measures that they're going to have to look into. Now, the next state is is New York, in the city of Mount Vernon. They didn't specify the amount, but they did say how they are going to raise the money. Quote, guaranteed income monies are not coming out of our city municipal budget. We are working with partners, churches, civic organizations, and corporations to raise the money. We're also a HUD entitlement community, so we are using some of our HUD entitlement money and COVID monies to provide that extra financial assistance right now, and doing it in a way we believe is innovative, end quote. All right, so this is what the mayor in Mount Vernon said. All right, and actually I'm going to show you a video of her pretty much announcing this, right? And after that, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do the math on that as well. Here it is.
Today we join the Mayors for Guaranteed Income Coalition. Guaranteed income aligns with the work that I've done for the past 30 years and the platform I ran on. COVID-19 exposed what we've already known, that is, many of our families are living on a fiscal cliff. Eviction, utility disconnection, and hunger are part of their daily reality. $500 a month won't make anyone rich, but it will provide an income floor and a supplement to help families who are struggling to live from day to day. What makes this different from other programs is that it provides a direct cash payout to families. It allows families to decide how best to use the money to meet their most essential needs, and it gives them a great sense of dignity. You shouldn't have to work multiple jobs to pay for your family's basic necessities, and that's why we're taking bold and innovative action aimed at ending the war on poverty. We're looking to roll out our program in the beginning of 2021. Mount Vernon, let's move forward together and make a difference for our most vulnerable families. Thank you.
All right, so Mount Vernon population is 67,035. All right, and doing a Google search, it showed that 9,860 live in the poverty line. So we do 9,860 divided by 4, which would be, a family of 4. That would equals to 2,465 families times 500 times 500. That equals 1,232,500, and then times that 24. That would be 29,580,000. All right, so that is the money that they would have to come up with. Now, are they going to be able to do it? I don't know, but $30 million is a lot of money for them to just be handing out like that. So what does that mean? In a state that already has high taxes, that means that they're going to have to raise taxes even more. As Cuomo has said in the past that was going to happen. All right, so those are the things that we have to consider now. Now that we're broke, now that the entire country is going to go through an economic collapse, now that the country is experiencing a lot of starvation, or at the very least, food insecurities, where we're seeing miles and miles of food lines of people trying to get whatever little food they can get from the food banks. This is coming at a time where we are experiencing a lot of economic woes. And then adding this on top of that is going to make things even worse. Even though they're trying to help people in the short term, it's going to hurt them in the long term. All right, so when I was thinking about this, I said that two things had to be made in order for this to work. One, no debt is created to prop up these programs, which is very important. And two, people continue to donate. As this lady said, as this mayor said in Mount Vernon, she said that they were getting money from, let me find it again, from churches, civic organizations, corporations, and from their HUD entitlements and COVID money. So if those things start to dry up, that means that the help is going to be very difficult to be given out, and eventually going to be forced to create debt. If they start going down the debt route, it's going to be even worse for everyone down the road. That means more taxes on top of all the taxes they already have. That means people are going to get angry once the money dries up. That means that they're going to have riots on their hands. There's going to be people in even worse despair than they were to begin with, because now they're used to the extra $500 a month. So there's different things that can go wrong compared to the things that can go right. All right, so let me move on to something that Klaus Schwab said, and he's the founder of the World Economic Forum. And as you know, he wrote a book. He wrote a book pretty much at the beginning of the pandemic that came out in June, I believe it was. And it pretty much talked about how COVID-19 was going to change the world. Okay. And, some people have been very skeptical on how did he know so much at the very beginning of the pandemic when nobody knew anything, nothing solid about it. All right. So this comes from planetfreewill.news. Klaus Schwab's magic money tree prediction is coming true. If you knew where the tree that grew money from its branches settled, would you want to shake it? Of course you would. You'd in fact want to shake it as often as you could. Comparing central bank monetary policy to a tree is an imperfect analogy, but to someone with little knowledge of the consequence of printing too much currency and going too far into debt, the difference between quantitative easing and a magic tree is nil. Reports are now surfacing showing that voters are becoming upset that their elected representatives may not send out the campaign promise of a direct payment of $2,000. Quote, "This is pretty much a betrayal to the working class. I know people are pissed off about it." Warnock, Ossoff, Kamala, and others have all pushed for $2,000 checks, but none of them have called on Biden to push for $2,000 checks in addition to the $600 checks. Considering the Democrats control Congress and the presidency, they could have pushed for more if they wanted to. This is a bad sign of how they will govern for the next 4 years. In his book titled COVID-19, The Great Reset, published in July 2020, World Economic Forum globalist Klaus Schwab predicted that the effects of the initial stimulus efforts by governments to keep both individuals and businesses afloat in the aftermath of the unprecedented lockdowns will create a scenario where the public would keep elected officials under, quote, fierce and relentless, end quote, pressure to continue the scheme of helicopter money well into the future. The idea is appealing and realizable, but it contains an issue of social expectations and political control, end quote. Schwab says in his book about printing money and giving it to the public, quote, once citizens realize that money can be found in a magic money tree, elected officials will be under fierce relentless pressure to create more and more, which is when the issue of inflation kicks in. Ben Franklin had a quote that everyone should keep in the back of their mind. Quote, when the people find that they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the republic, end quote. And the reason that is very important is because people will get used to getting free money. And once that safety net that I mentioned a minute ago snaps and no one can no longer be held by that social safety net, that's when people are going to get very, very angry. And they're going to start thinking that the government, since they're spending all this money on different programs, we're sending money to Pakistan for gender studies or whatever it was. We're sending money to Nepal, we're sending money here, we're sending money in there. We're propping up all these countries around the world. We have endless wars. We have all this money going everywhere. People will start thinking, well, if they have money for that, then they have money for us too. That's exactly what people were saying this time around in December when they passed the omnibus bill. Once all the pork came out, what happened? If you had friends and family talking about it, you know very well that they were saying that how could it be possible that they're sending all this money, overseas, that they're funding all these stupid little programs, that they're, doing all that, but the American people only get $600. That was one of the big things trending on Twitter, that, you send all these billions, but, people only get $600. Other podcasts and other preppers and other people were making fun of it, saying that, you can sponsor America with $1 a day, as if we were a third world country. And we're going to that direction, okay? Sooner rather than later, we're going to be going that direction. When are we going to hit hyperinflation? We don't know, because for very many people, we should already be in hyperinflation because we have $30 trillion worth of debt. In 2025, we're going to go into $50 trillion. At what mark, at what date is too much debt, where our economy collapses and we hit hyperinflation and there's a lot of scarcity all throughout the country, where we look like Venezuela, where all the violence finally comes out. But let me remind you, even when that day comes and we see increase in the in the violence around the country, in the scarcity, in the fear, things will come back, they will stabilize. People are going to start to getting used to the way things are. And then that's how everything goes from being chaotic to being kind of stable and normal. Because, COVID-19 brought us a new normal. People are tired of the mask and all these mandates and everything, but they've been living under it for almost a year. People are getting used to it. They're working their way around it. They're starting to think that now this is life. So even if we hit the hyperinflation mark, the economy collapses, there's violence everywhere, there's scarcity everywhere, that time will come where things settle down and it will stabilize, and that will be the new normal then too. That's why I keep saying that we're going to have to change the way that we think about how we think about prepping. All right, and I want to read you the new mission statement that we posted on our Facebook page, because I've been sitting here and my way of thinking about prepping has changed in the last year. Now that I'm doing this in the podcast, bringing this information to people, because things change. Things are not the way that they were, and we really have to look and really redefine how we're going to do things. We really have to think how we're going to take things, which direction we're going to go. Right? So this is my new mission. This is the new mission for ManMadeSurvival. This is the new mission for me to you. This is the mission for our community. Okay? My mission, or our mission, is to redefine and restore the prepper reputation, to create a community of well-prepared, selfless individuals around the world, and become a refuge for the unprepared, not politically motivated, but all united under Jesus Christ. And the reason that I want to put this statement there now, that this organization, this podcast, this whatever you want to call it, has evolved to this point, is because I have come to the realization that we're not just waiting for one event to happen, at least not anymore. The real long term of this is that we're going to have to work towards the time after the chaos settles, and now we have a new normal. That is the reason I say that we have to redefine and restore the prepper reputation. Redefine in the sense that we no longer look for that one event that's going to be very chaotic, that we have to prepare for just several months, several weeks, whatever it is that people are thinking out there, and really bring it back down to a way of life. Instead of being a hobby, instead of being something that you just do, it's a way of life. That means that you have to change everything around you to put yourself in a position where you're going to be self-reliant as much as you can. That means that if you live in an apartment, that you will eventually try to buy a house that has enough land for you to have enough garden space and to have, livestock. That means that if you have a house right now that only has a 1/4 acre, you think about selling that house and moving to a different location that is, more rural, and it's going to have what I mentioned a minute ago, more space for your livestock, for your garden, and for all these other things. If you live in the city or in the suburbs, you do that transition as well, because now you want to take the steps for you to be prepared for when things go down by not just relying on what you have stocked up, but on how you can change your life right now. And when things change or when things happen that's going to force your way of life to be more self-reliant, you're already there. You don't have to adapt. You don't have to, worry about what you're going to do. Things are already going to be there in place. And everybody in your family, in your alliance, are going to be okay. They already know what's going on. They already know how they need to prepare. They already know how they're going to contribute. And they have to know that now, in order for when that day comes, they already know how things are going to be, right? Because the big hole in the prepper community, as it has been for very many years, is that you only stocked up, let's say 6 months worth of food. But in reality, if something happens, like an economic collapse, the type of Venezuela went through, they have gone through it for 8 years. That means that you only had 6 months that was gonna hold you together, but you still have 7.5 years that you did not prepare for. You're going to outlive your preps. That is the reason why you have to make sure that now it becomes a way of life, that you are self-reliant, that everything, all the steps that you take right now are going to be for you to be able to help your family and help those around you to have a community that's going to be bigger than we ever thought of. That's why I do believe that this prepper community is going to reach heights that it has never had before. We're going to do things that has never been done before, and we need your help to do that. And the only way that there's several ways that you can help us, but the one that I would really appreciate at this moment is for you to share this podcast with friends and family. Share this podcast on all your social media, because even though, you know, I'm small right now, this organization is small, I do believe that in the coming months, in the coming years, it's going to get to a point where people are going to notice the prepper community. We're gonna take it to levels that it has never been before. We're gonna do things that never thought about before, and even if they did thought about it, they never did them. Right? So that's why I want to do those things, and it's gonna be something that is gonna affect, and it's gonna be better for everyone. And we have to make sure that all this is in place before the big collapse happens. That way, the plans that I have in mind, they can be implemented. And the collapse won't be as bad for people as it would be if we were not prepared. That is the reason why in my mission statement, I said that we will create a community of well-prepared, selfless individuals around the world and become a refuge for the unprepared. Because we know there's people who are not going to want to be prepared. We understand that there's people who, they think that we're nuts and that the supply chain is always going to be there. But we know as preppers that it's not. And we're going to be a refuge for them in the future, and they're going to be able to have a better quality of life under a collapsed society that they would if we were not around, right? So hopefully we get to the point before the big collapse happens. So that's why it's important for you to get behind us, to support us, to share this with your friends and family. And even if you think possible, donate. We do have a Patreon. We do have a Patreon page. It's always linked at the bottom of the videos. So I would really appreciate it if you go on there and make a donation, because those are the things that are going to help us grow. Or if you don't want to make a donation, you can go to the store and make a purchase. It's going to help you, and it's also going to help me. So those are the things that you can do in order for you to help us, become bigger, to have advertising money, to have things in place for us to grow this community and become a very solid group of individuals. So I really need your help. If you feel compelled to helping us, I would really appreciate it. And if you don't want to help monetarily, just help by sharing this video, by sharing this podcast, wherever you may be listening to this to. That is just absolutely free to you. All you have to do is hit the share button and put it on your social media. It's very easy. And you already do it day-to-day basis. If you on your social media, you share pictures of your family, you share videos that you think are funny, you share articles of whatever's going on politically. This could be one of those other things that you share on your page, and you can help your neighbors and your friends and other people be informed about this information that I'm sharing with a lot of people. All right, our podcast has grown. We went from 10 to 20 to now about 5,000, 10,000 monthly, depending on what matrix you look at. But the point is that it is growing, it's getting out there, and it's all thanks to you. So I really appreciate it. So again, share this with your friends and family. I'm going to go ahead and leave that here, because the next podcast after this is going to be talking about how the economy is being affected nationwide, right? On the national level, on the government level, rather than on the individual. All right. So again, my name is Jose Prado. Always ready.
The Man-Made Survival Show.